Yo, 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 yo. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to live coverage of the past. We've just... I know, right? I don't think I'm ever going to get used to this sort of thing. We're going to bring you coverage of the Windmill men's final from 2019, which is Great Britain coming up against CONDORS from Southern California. Benji Rees here with you, joined by the one and only Mr. Lorcan Murray. How you doing over there in wherever it is you are?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Just tipping my toes into the unknown, something that you are quite familiar with. And this was a little bit of the unknown for GB as well, going up against a veteran American team, played together for a long time, a couple of friends, a couple of European imports. I'm very excited to go through this game. We got a lucky straw. This was absolutely fantastic. That's a huge shot coming out of it. Is that Josh Briggs for the opening one?
It is. I mean, that flick huck, everyone knows that he wants it. And Robbie Haynes has had a huge couple of years for... I mean, he was magnificent for GB in the Euros that year as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like really good to see him back at the top level because my first year at university, so it would have been 2010, 2011. He tore his ACL. And it was like a really bad tear. Yeah. And so anyone who comes back from that sort of injury to play at the highest level gets the utmost respect from me. He's certainly not the only one, but just thought...
I mean, it's not super common, though, especially to come back the way he has. People talk about it in basketball, Kevin Durant, how it's insanely impressive there. It's an incredibly hard injury to come back from when athleticism, like that, especially jumping, is something that you rely so heavily on. This GB team, though... what were you going to say? Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like we take for granted how debilitating these injuries can be sometimes because so many players in professional sports and also in Ultimate come back from these sorts of injuries. But like you're having major reconstruction surgery on your knee or your ankle or whatever. Like it can very easily go wrong, and that's the thing done.
Which is, it would ruin you. But as I was going to say, this
also,
GB team,
quick question: what are you drinking? What are you drinking?
What am I drinking? I'm drinking Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey Whiskey.
Nice. I have a maple and pecan Danish stout, which I'm going to crack open. So here is some ASMR for everyone.
I found that very relaxing.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. Also, there's
just
frisbee
like
going on.
This is something about the CONDORS.
I mean, they seem pretty chill with it at the moment.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. Something about the CONDORS that I think really impressed everybody over the course of the whole 3 days was how well they played together. Like that level of ingrained, like almost instinctual skill that all of them possessed from being such veterans of the sport. Like they're veterans of teams that have been playing for 10, 15 years together. They had known each other for such a long time, along with like a couple of European pickups as well for the fun. But the way that they were able to just do so much stuff so quickly, those little give goes, those smooth passes and everything exactly where it needs to be. That level of consistency, I think, was a huge reason why they're able to just power their way to the final.
Yeah, and also, like, I really respect the level of warm-up that CONDORS were doing coming into this game, because GB were there, like an hour beforehand, intense drills, warm-ups. CONDORS just chilling out, having a bit of a throw, getting the beers in. Like, that's the commitment to Windmill that I fully expect.
That's what you should do. Like, it was strange to have a foreign team represent the spirit of the tournament so much in the way that, like, especially this year, so many teams were taking it seriously, which is counterintuitive when you're at Windmill.
Well, I think you have to try and find that balance between taking it seriously and also getting lit. Like, it's Windmill. It would be rude to, like, because there are some players who can go hard at the party and also on the pitch. Like, yeah, I'm not one of those players anymore. Not that I ever necessarily was good, so it didn't really matter. But like, It was like, for me, Windmill is a party tournament. It's about the party. But I appreciate that at the top level, like, this was basically the big warm-up tournament for Euros for Great Britain. So it would be kind of weird if they went out and got absolutely shredded the night before, given that, you know, they're not going to go out and get lit before the Euros final. Although if they did that, you know, full respect.
I mean, but that was kind of the thing about Windmill. And I suppose that's kind of what I'm asking you, is it's become this focal point, so many teams using it as a last big test before a major event. We see that huge shot going up, and they make it look so bloody easy. You're in Messink there having a great time. But it just, to me, it seems weird. Windmill is a celebration of everything that's fantastic about Ultimate. The competition, the camaraderie, how incredibly messy things can get when you really let that many people do whatever they want for 3 days. In the mecca of doing whatever you want, you're an adult, the Netherlands. And as more and more teams use it as this serious whetstone against which to sharpen their national programs, do you think that kind of takes away a little bit from the tournament ethos? Or do you think it's great when you can see someone like GB, who, let's be honest, couldn't take things more seriously? There's no possible way anyone can take things as seriously as the GB men's team takes being the GB men's team, going up against the CONDORS, who are literally American boys on tour.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why Windmill has endured is because it does strike the balance of, at the top level, it's really competitive, but down, as you go further down, it is very much a party tournament. And that's the great thing about having the Swiss draw format, is that you can have that tournament where, like, it's all the same tournament, but you'll get matched up against the same sort of teams. So you're not coming to a party tournament and then ending up playing all the really serious teams, unless you can get absolutely mashed and still dominate, in which case, full credit to you.
Yeah, what is up with this? I still, after going to Windmill now for years, have no working knowledge of how Swiss Draw is operated or where they got it from. It's just magic.
Okay, so what you need to do is you need to pray to the almighty algorithm.
Right. I'm a devout follower of the almighty algorithm.
Oh, that's it. There's no follow-up. Just you know. So obviously, I mean, you do know roughly how it works, right?
The more points you score, the better you do.
From the tournament. Yeah, they take the initial seedings based from the tournament predictions, which is a nice little way of doing it. And then each team starts with like a ranking. And then, depending on how well you do against other teams, your ranking goes up and down. And basically, so if you're a really good team facing up against a really bad team, the algorithm says, you're a lot better than these guys are. You should beat them pretty comfortably. And then if you don't, you go slightly down. And likewise, on the other end, if you're at the bottom and you play against a team that's really good, or a few places better than you, and even if you don't win, you run them really close, that gets you standing. It's why you have a team like, thinking about Wizards in 2018, where they won like a vast majority of their games, but they won them all in like sudden death or very tight, and it meant that even though they were winning games, they weren't actually going up the rankings that much, because they were playing teams at about the same level and they were grinding out wins by 1 point, which means, yeah, they're at the right level, so they're not going to go up the rankings, as opposed to in a traditional tournament format where you win games, you go up, and then you can have those horrendous mismatch because you've won all your games against bad, whereas good team won all their games against good teams, and they're weighted the same because a win is a win.
So, with this game at this point, this is something I wanted to ask you about, because you commentated this live at the time with Steph, and what was the kind of vibe in the stadium when the CONDORS came out and looked to just punch GB right in the mouth? And this is a well-regimented GB, been there for an hour warming up, and like you said with the CONDORS, they kind of rocked up, they're laughing, they're joking, they're having a great time playing to the crowd, but they'd come out and with some creative and experienced defense, they got in a few turns and then they just put it in against everything GB had put up to them.
I think I'll be honest, I think the mood in the stadium was hungover or still drunk, and I'll be honest, it was interesting because there was obviously, you know, on the part of it, you know, you like to see teams that are having fun winning. You know, GB were probably the favourites, so it was nice to not have that. But on the other hand, we don't want some Americans to come in and win it. Like, it's not fair.
It's not right.
So,
do you remember when
it was kind?
was it like the 5 All-Stars took on Germany one year in the final? No, it wasn't Germany.
Yeah,
it was Bad Skid.
it was Bad Skid, and I'm trying to remember what the
Something to do with an American.
It was the
dragon?
Rise Up thing.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
And that was, you know, it was cool to
really
see him. At the same
annoying
time, everybody was
because I
pulling
should
for Bad Skid.
remember this.
So something
Yeah,
that I thought was really great for this tournament for GB was in this game they got to go up against a team that can push you back, that can like go at you with this fearlessness that there's not a lot of teams, certainly that season, can really replicate for GB. It's the same problem Clapham have when they're trying to like prepare to go over to American tournaments. So do you think?
it was also really good for GB just to play a different team, because if you're playing Germany or whatever, like if you're go on.
Sorry, I'm just realizing the delay between the two of us. So, what the goddamn hell was I going to say? Oh yes, the fact that the Condors are able to bully GB. And what I was wondering was, because there's been such a gap, this is one of the most recent examples, apart from the tournament itself, of like the international teams going up against each other. Do you think with this time off that this mysticism around some of the more established teams is going to have faded away? Or do you think like maybe it'll be more open when we come back? Or do you think after so much time off, those teams with legacies and reputations will find it easiest to maintain them because, you know, their roots go so much deeper? All right. Well, I'd like to think that I asked such a good question that Benji had to log off to go discuss it amongst himself, refer back to his notes, and then come back to me with a great answer. And in lieu of that, let's just watch these Condors. And this is what we're talking about. Those kind of such delicate little plays in front of the end zone come from wealth of experience. Right there, that kind of ISO. You will see teams when they're pressured get drawn into that, but will suddenly start crowding the space. As the stall count gets higher, everyone tries to get involved. Everyone starts just making the cut that will get them free on their own. But when everybody makes that cut at the same time, cuts everybody, it just blocks up the whole passage. Those kind of panic cuts. Right there, that was very much an experienced play in that those two players knew each other so well, he could let just one guy directly in front of him in half the pitch width, right in front of the end zone, make all those cuts, give him that extra time to get free. That's so hard to cover one-on-one. And when nobody else comes to cut it off, when everybody else in the team is so experienced that they can trust you and trust those two guys go, oh, yep, that's what they're doing, they're going to score, it works beautifully. And that's the kind of thing that the Condors can do when you put extreme pressure on them. They're so used to working under those conditions, they continue to produce. And that gets harder and harder. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how experienced the team you are. We see this when things like the World Club Championships come up. It doesn't matter how good you are. Whenever you come up against a team who's better than you, you're going to want that panic's going to start coming back in. It just always happens, and the pressure gets more. You see it when like some of the best teams in Europe go against some of the best teams in America, and they just start turning over, making silly mistakes you've never seen before. So when someone like GB, which is such a powerhouse, that's a very cheeky move. You love little stuff like that. But when they do have the opportunity to go up against the kind of teams that will bully them, will put them under that kind of panic-inducing pressure, they come up with diamond-looking plays like that. That was fantastic. I also think this was a really great performance by Josh Briggs, who I've always liked from back in, I think, Smog days. And he used to be D-line captain, but he came over to O-line for this year, or for that GB team. This is all vague knowledge of what goes on in Great Britain that I possess. But like, as I thought, because I was associated with the D-line, certainly on Clapham. But he's really stepped up offensively. It was fantastic for GB. So, as I continue to just warble on, look at this again. Now that is confidence. That is poise. It just comes from the years and years of experience. I love that little throw as well. And Ashley Young getting the score. So GB back to 4-3, looking confident on the disc. That was probably their smoothest offensive point, apart from like the big hut that Josh put up in the first point of the game. So you can see they're starting to the Lorcan show, baby. Oh, it's time to take off my shirt. We'll leave that to the second half. You swapped that ratio back, Milan, you saucy pup. So, in order to make up for Benji not being with us right now, I will get drunker and drunker. And I hope everybody at home is getting drunk. And if you're watching this on YouTube, well then, I would say play along and jump into the chat. As here we see the Condors coming out against the GB defense, trying to play like a little bit of a switchy, pressury zone. But in that they are open, they're always looking for switches, because you can't really just play man-to-man at the highest level. Or person-to-person, I should say. Lovely little plays from Condor, because it just opens you up to those immediate plays. Not the one that was for the last score, but the one where it's just a fake, and you fake a defender once, and it's going to be a completed pass on the second side. When you have to react and just be nothing but reactionary, like you are on defense, most in person-based defense in Ultimate, you're always going to be on the back foot, unless you're superior physically, or you just guess right and get lucky one of those times. You're always going to get beaten. So what you start to see at the higher and higher levels is everybody tries to play person, but with openness to switching, basically constantly playing tiny small zones, constantly trying to set up little clamps, and that's teams where they're incredibly elite and they're incredibly well drilled, like GB, or are just so entwined with each other and have played with each other for so long, like the Condors. Let's see if I can find this on YouTube. So right about now, Condors were still keeping up that lead, keeping up the break they're able to get early in the first half, and having some fun with it. So at this point, GB were really starting to get comfortable, really starting to feel themselves, swinging it back around and getting back into the hands of break. That is a spicy break throw. Those are hard, because in order to hit it with like the pace, you just have to put a lot of welly onto it, and so many times those will just get skied. Maybe it's, if you're someone who's as good as me, you're going to sky a lot of them. But it takes a lot of chutzpah. It takes a lot of minerals to really commit those kind of throws right in front of the end zone. The chat is disabled? That's ridiculous. All right, I tell you what. If anybody watching knows my phone number or is friends with me on Facebook or something, just send me a personal message, because the chat being broken is ridiculous. That made it 4-5. They started settling into it more and more. Looking nice and easy. Oh, I would also agree. Will Rowledge's pecs are. I won't say who that's from, but I'd just like to say, if all you have to do is just send me personal messages, I'll respond to them. And see, we see the Condors looking for fun, and look how stretched they can make that GB defense, because GB has to recognize that basically all the throws are on all the time, which is such a difficult situation to be in. Create these big pools of space. Oh, that is brilliant defensive work. Again, GB were able to set up a little bit of a clamp, a momentary clamp, recognize that the player is quick enough, get them stuck in that situation, and get the block. So this was GB's, I believe, first turn.
Are you
they
winning,
got
son?
on the Condors in the game. Still 0-0 in the game that can end in a tie. As here we see GB desperately scrabbling to hold on to possession. I'm not gonna. Why does that matter?
Well, did you just like 0-0 just sounds wrong? Like, I don't know, but Do you want me to talk about Frisbee? It's nice to see GB being made to work for it, really, isn't it? Like, I think this is what they wanted out of Windmill, was to get really pushed by some teams that they didn't normally play as well. Because if you're playing Germany, who you expect to face in the final of EUC, it's going to be a slightly underwhelming game because no one really wants to show too much of a hand.
I hear you on that.
Like this,
I hear you on that. And maybe that's kind of what happened a little bit in the quarterfinal of this tournament when GB took on France and they kind of just walked them a little bit. But it did seem like France were holding back. But what I would say is in the game, do you remember the semi-final between GB and Austria where they basically went to war with each other?
I'll be honest, no.
The semi-final for
really.
this, I think it finished... I think GB wound up winning by 2, 11-9. But like 11-9 in the semi-final as GB come on screaming. But 11-9 in the semi-final, and those boys were just beating each other. It was very intense.
I could believe that.
As well, we'd just like to take this chance to remind you guys that you can become an ULTI.TV member today. That's part of the reason why we're doing all of this and putting all of this on. And if you sign up and help support the broadcast of Ultimate, we can help grow it. We can start to try and get a bit more coverage and just try and get it a bit more out there. As well as that, because obviously nobody gets something for nothing in this life. So we will give you a shout out on this stream if you sign up. And as well as that, there will be the party tomorrow where you can win prizes if you are a member. And some really great prizes there. Because we're always trying to pay people off. Look, you will make more money out of it than you will lose if you win some of the prizes. And also you accept semi-nude artistic photos of commentators as payment. Because if you accept that, then you will definitely make more than you'll pay.
I mean, who doesn't like free stuff?
Well, everyone.
No one. Everyone likes free stuff.
Everyone likes free stuff, yeah. Double negatives mess me up. Or do they?
They don't not mess you up.
I will destroy you. So 5-5 in this game. GB evened it up, but still started on defense. And it's now 8-7. So great work by GB there in the span of just 10 seconds. Not only retaking serve, but taking it and holding it until half, which was very impressive stuff by them. And do you remember how freaked out everyone was when GB in 10 seconds went from 5-5 to 8-7? Talk us through how that moment was like live, Benji.
I think everyone was kind of freaked out by it, but I also think that we also just kind of slightly thought that everyone had just taken like a little micro nap and we'd missed something and everyone was too afraid to bring it up, so we just kind of let it slide.
It's one of those things. It's kind of like, if you know the way they say all those kids who saw the Mother Mary and shit, like if I saw Jesus as an adult, I would be too afraid to tell anyone, you know? Like, it's like if you saw ball lightning in the 1800s. That's a real natural phenomenon, but you don't know that. And if you tell anyone, they might kill you for being a witch. So you just say it to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would have just explained it, but sure, go it. Yeah.
In the 1800s, if you try to explain the phenomenon of ball lightning to your rural village, they would burn you at the stake.
No. If you try to explain it, like that's Ireland. Like Ireland barely believes in science.
We believe in putting up more dominating performances against our territorial partners in European group qualifying games.
No, you don't. You're not in them.
I say we believe in it. That doesn't mean we actually do it.
Oh, we believe in it as well, but we also don't do it. I mean, to be fair, like Ireland are good as long as they're not facing the Czech Republic.
That's a lie, and you know it.
Yeah, that is a lie. I should have specified Ireland Open. Ireland Women's, great.
Exactly. Ireland Women's are absolutely phenomenal. Whereas Ireland Open, you know, sometimes they're playing games doing well and then they get lost up their own buttholes. No, the Czech Republic, first off, are a very good team and just had their number. They had like this heart, this indomitable spirit. Because you're referring to the point they beat him at Windmill, they beat him again at the tournament, and kind of became a nemesis for him. But the Czech Republic pulled out some huge performances that season. So now we're watching the pulling competition. Kinda.
Always a highlight.
You know, they let me in that booth. They let me in that booth one time, and they haven't let me back in. But I feel like I got the party started.
Do you? Is that what you feel?
Well, the problem I think I have is that with the microphone and the reverberation and my accent, it all gets a bit garbled. And then also, I may have been very, very drunk. But that's not
really
important. What is important is one time I won a race with a twisted ankle and wound up getting a free full-on cone filled with cocktails. And that was one of the crowning moments of my windmill as the second half of this game gets started. I agree, Benji. It is time that I started to plug my own personal ASMR album. So I've been working on an ASMR album, and it's basically it's just sounds of me sleeping. Yes?
I don't feel like that would sell well.
Why not?
Because who wants to listen to other people sleeping?
Who wants to listen to any of that crap on ASMR? It's just nature sleeping, or the sea sleeping. You just need those sounds to fall asleep.
All right, I have found the best ASMR stream. It's from the Vancouver Aquarium, and it's just a live stream of their otter pools. They're all just rescued sea otters, and honestly, it is the most calming thing. It's brilliant. Cannot recommend it enough. It's almost as good as the high quality Ultimate you can find at ULTI.TV.
If you become a member today, well, high quality Ultimate like this. And if we were to get more funding, maybe the high quality Ultimate could even be higher quality by not randomly missing chunks of the game. The CONDORS now had a chance to even up the game here.
Yeah, I mean...
But you could notice, I thought anyway, as the game got on, and this might have been a consequence of being hungover, but as the game got on, GB started to dispel more and more of the mysticism around these Americans, started to be able to really exert more and more of their influence on them.
I think also you could kind of slightly tell that the CONDORS had definitely gone harder at the party last night. Like, by the end, they definitely looked a bit fatigued, whereas GB were clearly kind of a bit more ready to go, probably a bit more up for it as well. Like, I hate the whole, in the end, this game came down to which team wanted it more, because that's, quite frankly, rubbish. Like, clearly both teams want to win in most tournaments. In this, GB probably actually did want it more. Like, but that's not why they won. They won because they played better, not because they wanted it more.
Yeah, exactly. And as you can see here, Shane Early getting the score. He stayed out pretty late that night. So you got to factor that in. It's about what did you want from the tournament. GB wanted to take on the best they possibly could and play as best they possibly could, really lock down and put into place their systems for an upcoming tournament. The CONDORS wanted to have the most fun they possibly could. And I think both teams achieved that.
Yes, I fully agree. Like, what a party it was as well. What a party. I mean, I'm just talking about the Saturday night party here. Obviously, like, you can go hard for pretty much 3-4 days straight at Windmill, which I highly recommend doing. But like the like silent disco in the tent. So for the first time, they'd moved the party into the tent rather than being in the club in the stadium. And I think it worked because that club in the stadium is pretty cramped and it gets so hot and so humid. It's unbearable. It's like you've never been to the.
Go on.
Have you ever been to the club that's like under the street at Paga, and it's just like the warmest place on earth? It's just hell, and it means that no one's really having that good a time because everyone has to leave every couple of minutes just to not, dehydrate, overheat, that sort of thing.
No. You have to leave. A lot of people really enjoy dehydrating to the point of getting the wobblies, because stuff happens in that steam.
Maybe that's where I've been going wrong. To be fair, I just use that as a great opportunity to go outside and get another beer.
I mean, any reason to go outside and get another beer is always a good one. But I do remember like that little secret rave room that was in a dark, strange place. But that's the thing about Windmill; it has so many nooks and crannies. Shower.
And it was brilliant.
It was like it was absolutely fantastic.
It was like they used the cover of the silent disco, so the fact that everyone would have headphones on and no one would recognize that there's a rave going up in the showers, like genius. And this is like not someone took a Bluetooth speaker in there. It's like no, they had like a DJ and lights and a smoke machine. It's like, god damn it, I miss Windmill. Really miss Windmill. See you there 2022.
You absolutely will, and hopefully you'll see everyone watching and ULTI.TV as well continuing their great coverage and everything they've done to try and help promote European Ultimate and have this kind of history, have these kind of resources available for all of us fans of the sport. What kind of a push pass was that? That was ludicrous. So become an ULTI.TV member today and help continue to support the growth of European Ultimate. It could be you on these screens, and it could be these two idiots talking about you. Imagine that. Imagine how great that would be.
And the best thing is when you watch us do commentary live is that you don't have to see our faces. It's brilliant.
That's also one of my favorite things about it, because I think it demystifies us to an extent. When we're disembodied voices, people can assign their own bodies to us. And I much prefer that because, it could go well for me. Whereas it can only go moderate to poor for me if you actually see what we look like. As here we see Mum, absolute titan of GB Ultimate. Does he still play for the national team, or do you reckon the sun's set on his career?
I'll be honest. I think we certainly would have seen him last year / this year if it had happened. And 2024, I think you'd be very brave to bet against him. To be fair, the question is just whether he. I think the question is just whether he's up for it, because I think he'd probably still have the skills to be there, and like it is also so valuable to have those kind of leaders in the side as well. Like you need those strong locker room leaders, so to speak, which Mum has been for many years.
Well, it's just a strange thing to think about. Like the last 2 years, how many players would have been enjoying their maybe final run that have now had to postpone it, or maybe have even lost that last shot at a season or two. I know a lot of people will... What?
I was going to say, I was gutted that, because I was hoping, like you were, I'm sure, to be working at the World Championships, and it was gutting that we couldn't get to do it. But thankfully, there's not really a shelf life on commentary on the same way there is on your playing career. And for a lot of players, that probably was their last, maybe only shot of representing a national team, because they've got other lives they got onto. They want to start careers or families, or they've got other commitments. Like it's a huge commitment to try and represent your country. And so for a lot of players in 2024, 2023, 2024, they're just not necessarily going to be able to be in a position to commit. And it's really sad that for a lot of that's kind of a mini generation of players that have lost that opportunity.
That was, for the record, Cameron Warner scoring that last point off Joram Mussink as we see GB come out here. Huge hammer. I love seeing hammers busted out. Now, normally it's a certain Swiss team busting them out, but anybody who's willing to throw them in finals is always going to win a little spot in my heart.
So I don't know about you, but when I started playing Ultimate, it felt like there were very few teams at the top level, certainly in the UK, that were willing to throw overheads. Like they were seen more as inherently kind of risky passes. Like, certainly when like Brighton, for example, they were the team that threw hammers. Like, that was the thing. Like,
they were known in Ireland as the team who threw hammers and screwers.
And they were called crazy for it. But I think more and more, like, if you practice those throws well enough and the conditions are right, A, they're very valuable. B, it adds another tool in terms of what you can do in terms of faking out your mark and making defenders have to think. And especially when teams use very tight vertical end zone sets, it's a great way to access the break side. It's a beautiful way of getting it out and into space.
Yeah. If you're being forced to flick as well. Especially. But it's one of those things, like, as the sport continues to grow, more and more things like people throw from earlier, they become more commonplace. Like, I remember left-handed backhands being described as a gimmick by one of my coaches when they were first rising in popularity back in, like, I date myself a little bit here, back in like 2011 and stuff. And a few people, like one or two people, the guys who were always working on the weird throws that spin the disc around and flicker like that kind of stuff, started throwing lefty backhands when they're right-handed, or offhand backhands, I should say. And then next thing you know, like 5-6 years go by, it's basically a required tool in every handler's offense.
I was going to say, as well as every handler, I think you'll find that most cutters probably have it now as well, just because it's a really good just release valve, I think. It makes dumping the disc a lot easier, which is something that teams at all levels somehow seem to struggle with.
It can be so difficult, like you're saying, when you're under that pressure, you've just made a big grab, everything's screaming, it's moving so fast, everybody's yelling at you, maybe you're isolated for 1 or 2 seconds because it was a deep shot, that you turn and then somebody's sprinting towards you so they're free and you have to hit them with a 3-foot flick. That's incredibly difficult to do, just be able to pop it up. But it just shows the constant progression of our sport as we see CONDORS progressing down the pitch smoothly.
It's a really nice leading throw into space, that one. It just cuts through the middle of the defence. It's like there's the benefit of working it towards one sideline, is then you've got that huge open space to shoot it into. And you don't necessarily have to go with that slightly riskier sometimes, or harder to execute inside-out throw. You can just kind of essentially make it flat into that space for someone to run onto.
It's the perfect half-field cut. It's like a 7, basically, where you just continue to the open side and then go to the break side, continue to the short side and cut to the wider one. And look at how much space he had put that on.
I will say, like, I think we can criticise the force here, because they're obviously playing back because they're wary about that up the line going on. The sideline needs to have better communication there, because because it's blocking nothing at all. Like, there's no one in that space, and it means that Tim Gilligan's just got a wide open throw, like, which we could easily be putting a bit more pressure on. Sidelining is important, yo.
Sidelining is massively important, yo. Like, how are you supposed to know what's going on the pitch unless someone's talking to you? All of the time when you're playing defense in Ultimate, you're having to make assumptions about where things are going on. There's only so much information you can have that's up to date. Where the disc is, where your person is, are the two things you should know at all times. And even sometimes you can't know that. But those are the two everyone's constantly striving to have in mind. So then where the other 6 people are doesn't really come into it as much. And sideline can be so huge in those ways. Or when you're on the force and just letting you know where the real threats are, what you can commit on. It's, I would say, vital at this kind of a level.
It's easier for us in a way from the booth because we're kind of, ideally, we've got that high angle in the middle of the pitch. We can see everything. We've got access to, sometimes, we've got a monitor with different camera angles and stuff on it as well. When you're on the field, you don't have that.
That's some break. But you're totally right. And your only option in those instances is to rely on the people talking to you.
Like, I've done drills with teams or at camps and stuff in the past, and I've seen people, I've been criticised for too much communication. It's like, you're never going to be able to do that in a game. And I think it's a very negative attitude, because communication is so important. Like, it can literally, just someone just dropping in for a second to stop a cut going, just shimmying on the force ever so slightly to put pressure on an inside throw, peeling off to pick up a deep cut. It can be the difference between winning and losing. Like, teams need to generally practice better communication, I think.
No, they definitely do. As we see the short front of end zone play, it's one of those things. Communication is such a huge thing, but it can be quite difficult. Say you're new on a team or you're one of the less prominent players, to find your voice and to be seen as like yelling at some of the bigger players on teams. And like with Condors in this instance, I think you'd find they're so comfortable just saying whatever the hell to whoever the hell on their team. It's such an asset. Whereas sometimes with national teams, especially when you have maybe a younger generation playing with an older generation, where there's people who they were trained by or they grew up watching or hearing about, be like, they're amazing, they start playing with them. That disparity can sometimes lead to coyness, and it can hamper how effective teams are, because they feel like if they start to communicate like that, it can sometimes be taken as criticism. Like if you're screaming at a guy on the pitch, cover deep, cover deep, cover deep, your worries like, oh, he's going to think I'm telling him he's shit at defense, rather than this is what you need to do right now, and you need to do it right now, which is why I'm yelling it at you.
And there's also a thing about knowing how to communicate to your team, because certain teammates, they respond to different types of feedback in different ways. Like, I'm the sort of player where if you're constantly shouting in my ear, do this, do like, or that wasn't very, usually I know when I've mucked it up. Like, you telling me doesn't actually help. But there are some people who, when they do bad things, they want to be called out, like, that was terrible, get your act together. And it's about knowing your teammates. It's a free reset. Generally, I like to see teams, when you've got that break opportunity, like, the easy thing to do is just to pivot out and just bang it. But most of the time, I think you're 2-on-2. Like, if you're playing 2-on-2, most of the time you'd back yourself to just work it all the way down the pitch. But so often you see the fast break and you rush it, as we saw there.
Yeah. It's a very rare misthrow, and it has to be said, it comes from rushing. And it's just not the kind of thing you'd expect. I think it was Shane earlier who put that up. But to me, I don't mean to be a bit of a spoiler here, but to me that was a real turning point in the game. Like, I think it hinged at that point. The Condors needed that. Like, they had the chance here, but to me it was right there.
It certainly didn't help. Yeah. And in the end, they scored the point. But, you're working a little bit harder than you otherwise would have had to. You never want to... I think you never want to be in a position where you have to do... Where you want to do as little... You want to work smarter, not harder. That's the thing, isn't it?
But that was the thing they were doing the whole tournament long. They were just working smarter. They knew each other intuitively. They didn't have to try as hard. They were used to playing against such elite competition that they were just able to, against the levels they're coming up against, remain calm and fun-loving, but still perform at an incredibly competitive level. But then GB started putting this extra pressure on him, as you see the great grab there from Yoram.
He's good, isn't he?
He's very good. He's a bit of a mystery, like just floating around the European Ultimate scene, playing with all these different clubs, played with Pelt for a while, but then who wouldn't love to have him on his team? Played over in America. It's just one of those
bit of a gun for hire.
I mean, would you say gun for hire or general for hire? Because he's just so good. They're the journeymen who travel around the world, of which I would be inclusive in a slight part. And then there's people who can travel from elite situation to elite situation. In some regards, you can see a little bit as the Kirk Gibson of Europe. Although I suppose he's...
I will push back. I know what you're saying in terms of they've competed at lots of clubs and they've been successful at. But in terms of that player, I mean, that's NAS, isn't it? That's NAS.
Because of the titles?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing for years about Gibson was that he went to teams and then they won. And that's, not so much in recent times for NAS, because, I mean, he's played for France now, for example, and France Open are not necessarily that good. But certainly when I started playing, he'd bumped around, I think, most of the top sides.
He had.
And you know what?
That's a good show.
I also think it's good, like, because I think a lot of the time players, they get into the system of a club and then they stay there for the entirety of their career. And then you only ever kind of learn one way of playing Ultimate. And actually, like, going around, playing for different teams, playing in a different country, in a different culture, where kind of just as well as what your team does, like the opponents tend to have different ways of playing, you know.
So how many?
But
I would say there's basically, I don't know how many different ways of playing Ultimate there are. If you were to move around, like, I get what you're saying about different cultures, but to me, a lot of the time, there's like 3 different cultures, and then there's just different levels of success at pulling it off. Like, a lot of people try to have that super dedicated, super rigid culture. You'd see the likes of Cusp or Clapham or Bad Skids. Now, certainly origins are slightly different in those clubs, like Clapham being kind of an all-star collective as everyone gradually gravitates towards London and gravitates towards the best club. Bad Skid coming out of like a youth program, I think a national team or something like that. Or certainly being a load of young players who are also very good, formed a club together. Cusp having such deep roots in their local communities and raising people up through their systems. But then once you get to the highest level, it's a lot of people who are just focused on being as dedicated as possible and doing the fundamentals as right as possible. Like, how much deviation between strategies or playing styles do you see in the European scene? Because I don't see that much.
Interesting. Yeah, I do kind of take your point, but there certainly are different philosophies, maybe more than cultures. Like, certainly I think we'll take Clapham GB as an example. Like, it's very regimented. Like, these are the systems. These are what we do. This is how it works. This is the system.
Yeah.
And then even then, teams that play regimented systems, like, there is kind of a general philosophy about how it works. Like, I think about Italian Ultimate, and I think partly because of Bologna and also because they do decent amount of beach and whatever. Like, there's a lot of like leading throws to the break side and things like that. I think about Spain, for example, and it's a bit more like they will kind of utilize the shorter passes a bit more sometimes on the beach. And the Hayden Slaughter. That's the one. That's
the one.
Look at him slapping around. Such a good shot. I was also very happy because I got to use the word apotheosis on commentary, which was a first for me. And, you know, what a play to use it for. Hayden Slaughter. Hayden's such an interesting player because he's just like, it feels like so much of the time he's not even really kind of trying. Like, it just it just seems to come so easy to him, and he's a lot more athletic than he looks because he's kind of very tall and wiry and sometimes a little bit awkward, but he does stuff like this, and you're like, oh, I get it, like, I get it, because this is a bad throw. It's a bad look. It should not have been thrown to, and it was a bad look and a bad throw, and mercifully for Ollie Gordon, Hayden Slaughter's there to be the world's greatest ever at street cleaner.
Yeah, no, it was a brilliant play. But I thought Ollie Gordon, who to me, and again this is from the outside of the GB cult or GB world even at that point, always struck me as like, he's going to be out there, he's going to be cutting, he's going to be able to mark people, and he's going to be able to receive passes and then get the jump back up. But then, like, this season, and maybe you start having a bit before this, you start taking more and more of a leadership role in the flow of play. And I don't know if it was experience coming to the fore, but you seem to be relied on more in the general passage of play than I'd ever really noticed before. Now,
yeah, certainly if you look at early Ollie, when Ollie Gordon was first playing for Great Britain, and if you look back to that very first Next Gen tour in the US when he was playing for them, he was mostly limited to being that deep cutter, reset occasionally. Like, they'll churn up yardage, for example, but they're not going to wow you with their throwing. And the reason that, you know, you see him with the disc more is because he's worked at his throwing. Like, he's still not a natural thrower necessarily in the same way that someone like a Justin Ford is, for example. You know, like, some players, like, again, it feels a bit more effortless than it is with others. Mm-hmm. But to be correct, there are a couple of players on this GB side who were very much, they were standout defenders, they were very strong cutters but not good throwers. Players like Ollie Gordon, like Ashley Yeo, like Will Rowledge, and
great packs.
Yeah, great facts. And the reason, and then you see them with the disc more because they've worked on their throwing more, and it means that they're put in more in those positions of trust to not necessarily always be the big play option, but just to move the disc more consistently and even break the game open with their throws a bit more. Whereas, as opposed to just taking the safe, easy, conservative under options.
See, I hear you, but I thought personally when I was certainly watching that season, seeing him get the disc a lot more, I thought it was because he had the minerals to get the disc. Because something that you see happens at those elite levels, or when you're under a lot of pressures, people who have the ability to go get the disc pull back a little bit because they're afraid of what happens once I have it in my hands and this moment is on me, which Ollie Gordon's never been afraid of, even if maybe he should have been a little bit given his skill at throwing. In some of those situations, he's willing to take those throws on. He's willing to get the disc and try something because he's not going to be cowed by the moment, even when at times his ability would lead other people to be very much cowed by the moment. So I thought he kind of found himself in that position.
And that's what you want because...
Yeah, true. Go on, man.
Yeah, at the top level, if you're carrying players who are slightly limited, or just even if it's all mental, like they have the ability, but they're not confident in like going out there in sudden death and throwing the final score or catching that goal, like you can't put them on the line because there might come a time when someone just has to say enough is enough. I'm putting mine like. No, everyone's a bit unsure. I'm going to go and put that strong cut in and put my name on it. Like, I'm gonna be that, the every other week going to run it through me. Like, as you say, there it takes a lot of balls, metaphorically.
I haven't said balls yet.
To be the guy who
trying
says,
to be gender neutral the entire time. For the record, beautiful little dink into the end.
I just think balls is a great word.
I mean, it's a good word, but like. I used Hebrew rather than be gender specific. And I don't know what chutzpah means. It probably means like cum or something like that.
Chutzpah is a great word.
It's great.
Yeah,
what does it mean?
Like moxie.
Moxie. Now I would say moxie over balls. Because I'm trying to stop saying things like balls so much. Like that takes nads. I don't want to say that. I would rather say moxie. But that is game, as we can see. We saw a turn at the start. Condor, like I said, came out and punched it. Just that inherent, intrinsic skill and readiness. But GB settled into the game, started to put more and more pressure, started to demystify the fluidity that Condor played with, started to really exert who they were, and started to put pressure on the Condor offense. And then after that, they were just smooth, easy, work their way home. And it really was a fantastic final. Ended 15-11, but it was very competitive and a lot of back and forth in it.
I mean, bear in mind, it was pretty much tied. Like, Condors took the lead, and then GB clawed their way back into it to Galaxy Point, which they won. And then it was still tied for the first half of the second half. And then GB
10-10.
just had that bit more in the tank at the end, and they accelerated. But yeah, it wasn't easy at the end. Like, we had to see Slaughter make that ridiculous, like, do his best, like, Zamboni impression and clean everything up. Like, they didn't have it easy by any means. Like, it was the sort of game that both teams came to Windmill for.
As we're going to have one more
even
look
if Condors did win, like,
unbelievable layout. Look at the photographer.
Like, they came to Windmill to play top level competition. Bang that ground go. Bang it.
So happy he got
but for those of you wondering, did he get the shot? Oh boy, he got the shot. He got the shot. This is actually, I think it's. Sorry, I just want to say, like, this is like, it's credit to Windmill that, like, they, as well as running the tournament well, like, they, all the games go off without a hitch, mostly, especially given the deluge of rain we had on the Saturday morning.
Yeah,
it's incredible that we were able to run pretty much a tournament as we were, and the party's always great, and there's always food and beer and good vibes, and it's the little things as well. Like, there's a team of photographers going around the ground, and because it's not just one person with a camera, it's you've got multiple people out there. It means that actually you can, like, it's not just everyone's on the show pitch. They've got one camera which is on the show pitch all the time. Like even on the back reaches of the complex, there's someone with a photographer or with a camera crew. There's volunteers out there filling up water and stuff. Like the Windmill tournament crew and all the volunteers that give up their time to work there do such an amazing job. Like full credit to, cannot thank Herbie and the Windmill crew and the incredible volunteers enough, really. Oh no, God, I miss Windmill.
I miss it too, which is why we're giving you this little bit of a little taster, just a little bit to get you by until next year when we come back in person. We can all see each other again. But you can also see plenty tomorrow if you're willing to become an ULTI.TV member. We will be going back on the same platform to do the mixed final, as well as hosting a wonderful game show, which I'm very excited for, by our own Stefan Rapazzo. Along with that, there will be chances to win prizes if you are an official member. And until then, thank you very much for joining us. Remember, you support ULTI.TV, become a member. You can support the expansion of European coverage. And join us back here tomorrow for some more digital Windmill. And join us next year for some in-person real Windmill. I've been Lord Murray. I've had a fantastic time hosting this with you. Benji?
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been great fun, as it always is. Thank you for Windmill and for ULTI.TV for having us back. I will see you in the chat for some more festivities and fun tomorrow. For Lorcan Murray, I've been Benji Rees. We'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everyone.